What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch, and the Rein changes just went live into the PTR. We had them announced much earlier in the day, but we wanted to wait for them to go onto the PTR so we could adequately test what the changes actually were. And the results are quite interesting. Now, has Reinhardt been buffed or fixed? Sometimes it gets a little hairy with defining these terms, of course. A character like Doomfist, which had an outrageous ability to teleport across the map, though they might fix it to not do that anymore, but that's an objective nerf. He used to be able to do insane superhuman abilities, and now he's reined in, right? But with Reinhardt, it's a bit weird because a lot of the things that happened to him were bugs that sort of either were inherent to Reinhardt the entire time throughout the lifecycle of Overwatch, or kind of developed throughout other patches for unknown reasons. Game code obviously is like any type of software. You start to tinker with one aspect of it, and another part can start to malfunction. And to some degree, I believe that's what happened to Reinhardt. And hopefully, this big patch will fix that. But onto the testing. I think the most important thing to cover is Reinhardt's pin. As the German badass flailing his body towards a target, we've seen all sorts of clips where the Reinhardt pin doesn't connect and bobbles the target into the air. Now, the interesting thing is a lot of these problems have to do with latency and internet connection, and that's something I'll explain in a second. In the testing environment, testing against bots, we've noticed that on the PTR version of Reinhardt, it's almost impossible to recreate a first contact boop, meaning that whereas on the live version of the game, if you just sort of brisk past an enemy target and it's somewhat touching his shoulder or part of the pin animation, they'll at least be knocked up into the air. Whereas on the PTR version, it's almost impossible to recreate the situation, and you either hit the pin or you whiff completely, which by some measure you might think is a nerf, because even though it might be less than ideal to knock an enemy into the air, it does some damage and of course displaces them. Maybe you want to do that, but that might not tell the entire story, because the way that latency works in the game, with all online multiplayer games, this is especially prevalent in shooter games, which is why developing netcode is so important, you essentially have multiple realities working at the same time, because even with the fastest internet possible right now, it's impossible to have a one-to-one ratio between what the server thinks, what your enemy's screen has, what your screen has. All these functions are trying to work in unison, and the server ultimately has to decide whether your character was standing in one spot or slightly to the left, whether this ability landed or not. There's a lot of complex math and rounding, actually, that's going on behind the scenes when every player has a bit of lag on their side inherent in multiplayer gaming, and because of this, my theory is what they've done now is made it harder for that really wide boop threshold on the pin to be basically non-existent. But in theory, what that should do is mean on the Reinhardt side of things, when there's latency involved, it's going to more accurately either land the pin or miss. Now, we're going to have to see through playing the game after this patch goes live if this is the case more times than not, because a lot of these situations with Rein pins are difficult to reproduce. He has trouble landing pins on stairs, for instance, sometimes under the right circumstances. That's another thing that's supposed to be fixed on the PTR. Hammer hit detection, swing speed, fire strike hit detection, all of which this patch should fix. We'll have to see when playing the game how effective it was, because latency was one of the biggest culprits to giving Reinhardt problems. One thing that they haven't addressed yet that Jeff Kaplan mentioned that they will in the future is earth shatter hit detection, which sometimes doesn't connect when it probably should. And I think the most common occurrence of that not working is when it has to wrap around map geometry, whether it's like up the payload, under the payload, or if there's something in the way, or upstairs, for instance. The interaction of the earth shatter can sometimes not pick up where you think it should. All things considered, Reinhardt should look to be more playable, coming to an Overwatch near you once this PTR patch goes live. Also, a quick correction from yesterday's video. This McCree buff from yesterday actually does something a little bit different than I thought. In fact, what the new stun does is halt all momentum of a character after they get stunned. On the live version of the game, a character will keep their momentum yet be disabled by the stun, whereas the new stun stops them in their tracks, which is, of course, a lot better than the old stun, making it much easier to hit that follow-up shot and being yet another item in the game of Overwatch that is nerfing dive. This especially is going to be good against flankers, the opposite of what I said yesterday, because, of course, hitting that follow-up shot, even if the Tracer or Genji, or Reaper for that matter, is purposefully jumping at an angle, it won't do them any good. It used to be that you could kind of outplay the stun by strafe jumping past them, because even if they hit you with it, you'd be a nightmare to try to follow up on. Now, with the new stun, you're going to drop like a rock, and they're going to be able to set up that follow-up shot, similar to how Roadhog works. Well, that's it for today's video. Really exciting times in Overwatch. A lot of characters getting fixed. The meta is going to be moving before long, and I can't wait. If you enjoyed the video and found it useful, please leave us a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, because we upload each and every day, so you're going to want to hit the bell icon so that you join the notification squad and get notified when our videos go live. Linked in the description, you can check out our Discord server, where you can interact with our community and find the Reinhardt main of your dreams. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.